Hello and welcome to Rocky Mountain Movies. I'm your host, Rocky Mountain Brock, and we're going to return to book versus movie Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or Who is the Better Greg, or, who's at least a little more tolerable. Now, after a little re-review of the book, I have to say that the movie is much better structured than the book is. The book is basically just something happens, something happens, something happens, while the movie does a much better job at cause, effect, plot, and themes, especially going through. For example, outside, we're about to enter the Christmas episode, and the only thing we really get from it is the setup that Greg got weights because he asked for them when he went out for wrestling. However, in the movie, it's a much bigger theme. The idea that he wants to get popular, joins the wrestling team. And I gotta say, movie Greg is much smarter than book Greg in this sense. Because book Greg tried to stuff all his clothes with socks and stuff in order to look bigger, while movie Greg was smarter and just put on weights. Of course, that also led to him wrestling the first female, and then him losing credibility because he lost to a girl. However, there is the point of popularity, where looking at the book, Greg puts himself at around the 52, 53 range, while movie Greg puts himself at 19. However, the movie constantly points out that what he does affects his standing. Him losing to Patty, it lowers his standing. His little performance at the play lowers his standing. It's not just a one-off. It's basically just a one-off in the book. While through the movie, it's a constant theme of him wanting to be popular. And another thing, the book also makes it a plot point that he wants to be considered one of the class favorites, wanting to be in the yearbook for something nice. In the book, however, it doesn't start until page 196. Greg literally doesn't start his whole I want to be a yearbook favorite until there's only 21 pages left in the book. And the book even ends with him stating, if anyone wants a free yearbook, they can dig it out of the trash can in the cafeteria. He is literally that sore a loser on something that he only wanted less than a month ago. But I digress. We enter the Christmas arc. Now in the typical Christmas arc, now the movie doesn't exactly go into any of this, but the book, I will have to say, does add a bit of relatability to it. Where Greg wants one thing specifically for Christmas, and there's a giant, is he going to be able to get it? He's his little brother, get it pretty much everything he wants. His uncle, his Uncle Charlie, who typically gets him whatever he wants, gets him a 4x8 picture of himself. That's actually a good setup and it's pretty funny. The book also points out the whole brand new weight set, which the movie he mentions but never shows. So it makes sense. And I will have to point out that with the sweater gag, where it turns out that his parents did get him the present that he wanted, but it got mixed up with their charitable donation where he gets the sweater and the person gets the video game. His mom's like, well, at least someone less fortunate got a really good gift. But Greg points out, it's a video game. If he doesn't have a TV and a set to play it, he's not going to be able to use it. Which, again, actually puts some thought into it. Okay, I give the book that. Yes, the New Year's Eve prank. This does point out a reoccurring theme throughout the book. The idea that his little brother is spoiled while his older brother picks on him. And because he's the middle child, he's kind of lost in the loop. The book, however, points out a story of him messing with his brother by getting a ball of thread, pretending it was a spider. His little brother accidentally eats it, and then points out that oh, this is funny. His brother tells on him, says that he ate a spider. His brother, Greg explains, it was just a ball of thread and it was an accident. Their mother takes out a plate and points out a seed, a raisin, and a grape, and asks Manny to point to which one was the closest in size. Manny goes to the fridge and picks out an orange. Okay. If any of you have little siblings, yeah, that's relatable. I will point. So yes, I will point out that at Diary of a Wimpy Kid that the book does make it much more relatable at him trying. I will point out that the book does do its best to make its main character relatable. Not exactly a good person, but in a few relatable situations. Where nothing really goes his way. And now, of course, there is, of course, it is also kind of funny how he goes ahead and when he's writing thank you notes to all his relatives, he just copies and pastes all of them. Thank you so much for the awesome encyclopedia. I love the way the encyclopedia looks on my shelf. And it gets worse. Thank you for the awesome pants. I love the way my pants looks on my legs. Again, funny. But now we get into the big wheel arc. Well, I do admit it's kind of fun. It's very 12-year-old kid to have one of them ride a bike and have the other try to hit them with a football. But the fact that one of them gets their wrist broken and the other keeps trying to talk it over, that is something that both the book and movie do that aren't that great. So yeah, same thing. So yeah, book and movie are the same thing. However, I do like that in the movie there's that subtle indication that at they're both in home ec class, and Greg clearly picked it because it was going to be an easy class, and his casserole is burnt while Rowley's looks professional grade chicken. While the book goes into greater detail of how he came up with the whole splinter that went uninfected, do you want to sign my sympathy sheet? I will also point out that while he makes Fregley out to be a bit of a creep, it is also very 11 to 12-year-old kid who want to see an infected limb or see a body part that's broken. It's just sort of the morbid curiosity of that age. It's like you step on a bug and you kind of need to see it afterwards. But yes, now we get into independent study, something that was glossed over in the movies as it didn't really add anything, where you're put in independent study, they're separated into the boy group and the girl group, and that they have to make a robot and see what they do. Greg makes it do a bunch of stuff that he's too lazy to do my homework, do the dishes, make breakfast, brush my teeth for me. And then, of course, the robot gets decommissioned because instead of adding a profanity filter, they go ahead and just list a bunch of curse words, which seems a bit of a forced setup, but I'll allow it. Yes. On page 150, we get the whole "it's great to be me" show. The whole you need to embrace that which makes you more unique. However, in the movie, they do make it a little funnier that Fregley friggin' cries at this movie, and Greg sees this as sort of an opportunity to reinvent Rowley and help it smooth out the rough edges of his personality. The guy who shows up to the first day of school wearing the serape, or wearing his backpack with 2 straps instead of using just 1. But again, the movie is able to work that out into the theme. Greg is losing popularity because he's inauthentic and cares too much about what people think, and Rowley gets popular by being authentic and being himself. But again, the movie is a bit smarter with this because the whole "it's great to be me" thing, it's less than 2 pages. Well, the movie knows what to do. But then we get to the crossing guard arc, which of course the book Craig uses as a complete power trip. How he's determining who crosses the highway. Can we please cross the street now? No. But we've been standing here an hour. Yeah. Again, it kind of points out that a very minuscule amount of power goes right to Greg's head. Well, in the movie, it's clearly a fantasy, where in the book it's just, how can I abuse this? So of course, the book keeps pointing out how it's the whole free hot chocolate and I get to miss class just by escorting kindergartners. Uh, but again, we also hit the whole snow arc, where again we're sacrificing plot and cause and effect for relatability. February, Greg wants to do one of those, I want to create a massive snowman and get famous, because that's what we all try to do. But it very much doesn't do well. It pretty much doesn't do well, and you're left with one that only comes up to about his waist and covered in moss and grass and stuff. And then they decide. So instead of making a giant snowman, they decide to instead throw it at a bunch of the neighbor kids, because you're starting to see why they didn't use this. However, before they can do their master plan, his little brother decides to make a mini snowman, which Greg immediately kicks over. You know, it's weird. You know Manny's a snitch, but you decide to just be a jerk anyway. And then, of course, his dad comes out, completely destroys their giant snowball. And then him and Rowley get ambushed by a bunch of neighbor kids throwing snowballs, because irony. While on some level it's kind of relatable, the trying something and ultimately failing, it doesn't make Greg look any better, and it's just sort of the whole whatever you try ultimately ends badly form of relatable, rather than, which I guess is what kind of got him the popularity to begin with, but I digress. Yes, and now we get to the school cartoonist arc. Now, in the book, they made it clear that they came up with the whole idea for Zooey Mama together because, as Greg put it, instead of thinking of a joke each time, just make the punchline the same thing over and over again. Make it Zooey Mama. So then we put up, but of course there is the whole, but in the movie it does do a better job. The whole Rowley's sense of humor versus Greg's sense of humor. With Greg, it's you have to point out that person is an idiot. Rowley is much more random humor. The movie, it's the whole acid puddle joke. But there's also, of course, let's see, what was it? Yes. The guy tries to ask out a beautiful lady, but it turns out to be just a dog with very long hair, which it's weird when you remember it as a kid. You see it as a lame joke, but older, it's weirdly funnier. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it does showcase that Greg has a much harsher and mean-spirited sense of humor, to Rowley being more, of course, family-friendly. Of course, the book points out that Greg eventually wins the cartoonist seat, only for it to get edited to the point where he seems like a teacher's pet, and then quits, only to be replaced with Rowley. In the movie, it does make a little more sense that Rowley just wins. The idea that it's random, it's family friendly, people like it. And again, it points out the whole point of the film. Greg keeps losing popularity because he's inauthentic, mean-spirited, and cares too much about what people think of him, while Rowley is genuine, authentic, and would be happy as a lark just being himself. And then we get into March, where the safety patrol incident comes into play. Now, the movie again points out that the only reason Greg did what he did was because he's afraid of the Halloween kids finding him and hurting him. In the book, he just put a worm on a stick and screwed with them. But what's completely worse is that in the book, it's the same thing, where his mom tells him he should do the right thing, but in the book and the movie, Greg says that it's best that Rowley takes one for the team. The movie, at the very least, points out that might not have been the best call, but he does it anyway, while Greg ultimately hits a friggin' milkshake hot fudge sundae for telling his mom that he did the right thing. And of course, the movie does. Of course, the movie does it a little better with the confrontation, where Greg tries to pawn it off as, this is a learning experience for both of us. I shouldn't do it in front of a snitch's house, and you should be more careful who you give your jacket to. And that's the point where Rowley just points out, don't call me. You are not a good friend. I think that in a sense is the fun, which is weird. Again, this is one where that happens at a little after the halfway point, where it's about 2/3 of the way into the movie. In the book, it's at page 184. Again, there are only like 40 pages left in a 200-page book. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it's more impactful that it happens earlier. And plus, there is the whole how the book puts it, that there was an anonymous source, and how the anonymous source is clearly Rowley in the book. The movie knows how to fix it and says, no, one of the kids came forward and said it. So it does make sense that Greg gets punished and Rowley gets promoted for loyalty under pressure. And of course, and I do feel like at this point we are starting to see Greg become a bit more of a jerk. Because even book and movie, even though Rowley has been a total jerk lately, I tried to break the ice with him by ambushing him in the back of the head with a snowball. Greg, I'm not sure where you're going with any of this. I think you're just mad. Becomes best friends with a guy named Colin, which again, the book does a little bit better at reintroducing him early on, and how he and Rowley do share interests, so it's not just coming out of nowhere. Then him trying to make friends with Fred Egley, and how that goes. Again, the book does his way. The movie does is much better at the whole him coming out and just hugging his parents because he's scared. That I know it's a bit over dramatic, but it does make us like him a little more. Here, it's just him. In the book, it's just him trying things, and are we even rooting for him at this point? Let's keep going. Again, in 196, about 20 pages left is when they start pointing out the yearbook photo and how he wants to be one of the class favorites. In the movie, they point this out fairly early on and make it a reoccurring theme. Here it's in the last literally 10%. Now, I will give the book credit that they point out that people who are voted most likely to succeed ultimately sometimes burn out and don't really amount to much, but still, to be immortal in middle school, is there any better feeling? Yeah, but we won't tell them that yet. But we won't tell them that yet. So you decide. So at first he decides to. Ah, yes. Ah, yes. Now, in the books, he tries his best to become class clown, which, in typical him fashion, just doesn't work out, especially with his mom somehow showing up and embarrassing him. And he is very glad that there is not a category called Biggest Mama's Boy, because he feels like, yeah, he'd probably win that. At this point, I feel like you're trying a bit too hard, but whatever. Ah, yes. Now we get into the last 10 pages. Now, where it gets to the final fight. But of course, they're both 12-year-old Wimp. Greg and Rowley finally get put into a circle where everyone's saying, fight, fight, fight. But in typical 11 to 12-year-old fashion, and both of them being wimps, neither of them really know how to fight, so they're both just sort of dancing around each other. But I do think it's much different based on how this happened. In the book, it's because since they both worked on Zooey Mama, and Rowley's getting a lot of popularity because of Zooey Mama, he feels like he's entitled to credit. Instead, the movie is just pointing out how Greg's just being refusal because Rowley wants something that was his returned, and Greg's dragging his feet because he doesn't want to. It does point out that it's more that in the movie, it makes it clear that this fight has been coming. The idea that Greg feels entitled to a bunch of stuff, and Rowley feels like he's always the punching bag to whatever Greg is doing. And Greg points out, why are you complaining? Everything works out for you. To which they start fighting. And then of course, the bullies from earlier show up, who haven't just been Halloween and now they're here. They have been a constant presence. They show up and are about how to mess with them when, of course, the cheese shows up. And again, I will point out that the movie again does this well. Or not only well, it does it way better than the book. Because at first, here's the entire story around it. How everything happened and how it's told and how it's just this local middle school legend. The book, it's weird how it, like I said, the book, when they're telling the story, they have this thing where you could only not get the cheese touch if your fingers are crossed. So Greg tapes his fingers together, which makes him fail handwriting, but he feels it's worth it not to get the cheese touch. But just the way the movie handled both the urban legend, the build-up, it makes the cheese happening much better. And in fact, what happens the movie again handles the situation. Even though they make Rowley take a couple bites of it, in the book, Greg gets out of it by saying he's lactose intolerant, and they somehow believe him, because how the heck did that happen? Where in the movie, he tries to say it, they don't believe him, and then one of the teachers shows up, which, yeah, that makes more sense. And then, of course, in the final few minutes, the movie decides to try to be about something, where Greg points out the hypocrisy and the non-existence of trying to be popular, and all while the character, who's clearly a studio note, watches. Though I do feel that while it does feel like you're trying to add a theme or a plot that wasn't present in the book, he'll give it a little credit that they are trying to make the character a little more likable. And of course it doesn't work because Greg touched the cheese and now he's the outcast. It's better than how the book, it is better than how the book put it, where he just he threw it away, like he could have said it with a shovel or something. But it does also point out that him taking the blame and asking Rowley if he wants to play is his way of finally acknowledging his fault, and him apologizing to Rowley. So yeah. And then of course there's the ending, which again is much better. In the book, him and Rowley become friends again, only because he hate the talk, but always talk. But the very last line says, if Rowley ever gets too big for his britches, I'm telling everyone who ate the cheese. While in the movie, Greg is being bullied by Patty, saying that I don't want to even touch you because you have the cheese touch. And then she hugs Rowley and is like, you're right, you're way too smart to touch someone who has the cheese touch. Which, again, kind of works to the whole inside joke friend thing. And in the end, in the book, Rowley wins class clown for Zooey Mama, and Greg throws his yearbook in the trash. And in the movie, he and Rowley get voted cutest friends, which Greg just says, I'll take whatever I can get. So yeah, that was the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, and I gotta say, while it does have a lot of relatability, it doesn't have a lot of story structure. It does feel, which I get the point that this is sort of just life and how it is happening for this character who isn't in any position to really make anything of himself, but there is the essence of you're not doing anything, not because the world is against you, but because what you're trying to do isn't very good, and you're not exactly putting any effort into what it is. You want things to come to you as easily as possible, and shortcuts usually take away more than they give. The movie, on the other hand, while it clearly didn't have a whole lot to work with, does become a bit of how you treat people and the whole structure of what people think is popular isn't always what's important, which I can get behind. So final score. While the book does have a certain relatability to it, which I think is a draw for a lot of people, I gotta say watching the movie is the better experience with the better characters. I can't and the way I see it, if you want to do either, I'd go ahead and do either. The choice is yours. I'm Rocky Mountain Brock, and God bless.